Hi, today I thought we would take a look at Chapter 7 and how we identify different kinds of consumer loans, how we choose consumer loans, how you can work with a single payment loan. And we're also going to look at installment loans, which most of you probably, many of you already have had one, which is like what a car loan is, where you get a chunk of money to purchase something and then you make payments on it over time. So we're going to learn how to set up a loan schedule on Excel. So if you're watching this, you might want to get Excel loaded at some point. So yeah, we're going to look at different kinds of loans. We're going to compare finance charges. This is much like the unit on credit cards, where you've got to be able to compare apples to apples. So we're going to look at different kinds of loans and compare finance charges, maturity, when they're due, collateral, how much you may or may not have to put up as an asset to get the loan. And just basically we're looking at consumer loans. So it's really important that you understand each of the types of credit sources, what it's going to mean over the long term. And then we're also going to do a worksheet that compares the benefits sometimes, or at least make a comparative analysis of if you have cash in the bank, say for a washer dryer for $1,200, when is it better to get a loan, more financially prudent for you, and when is it better for you to pay cash? So there's kind of a lot going on in this chapter. So consumer loans is anything that you buy you sign a promissory note, and it specifies how long are you borrowing the money for, that's called the term. When's it due, that's called the maturity date. These are, as we talked about last chapter, this is not an open line of credit. So it's a specific amount for a specific purchase. In the last unit, we talked about open lines of credit like home equity loans or credit cards. And those just give you a balance that you can borrow up to. So in this, we know just from studying about debt ratios, that really anything that you're buying over time should have a useful life longer than the terms, obviously. So if you're putting an old beater car over 7 years, that doesn't make much sense, because the asset is going to not last as long as the loan. So generally they're, these kinds of loans, we know all about this, where you purchase electronics or furniture, appliances on credit, auto loans, school loans, etc. There's many different kinds of federally sponsored student loans. And for most of us, those are cheaper interest rates. It's cheaper money, as they say, than going to a bank and getting a commercial loan. So it depends upon what your FAFSA indicates that you qualify for. In the book, and these rates are from a couple of years ago. If anything, I would imagine that the rates are a little lower and that the amounts are a little higher, because these numbers are a tad bit dated. But you can see where your rates are at. As a parent, I mean, this is no bargain. You could very well, like in our situation, it was way cheaper to borrow for our kids' school from our home equity loan, because the rates were so much more competitive. So there's different kinds of consumer loans. This is going to be one of the focuses today, the difference between a single payment and an installment. So a single payment loan is, let's go back to the washer dryer. Like I want a washer dryer today. I go to, my local appliance shop. They carry me and I buy it, and they say the terms are you need to make one payment in 9 months. So I don't have to do anything for 9 months, and then I have to pay them this lump sum. So obviously the interest is going to accrue over that 9 months, and then I pay them back the principal plus the interest. On an installment note, they say, hey, we'll write you a 9-month note, but you need to make payments on it every single month. That works just like what we were talking about in our tables, right? It's an annuity, a repetitive, periodic payment of the same amount of money. And then we've talked about fixed versus variable. Fixed rate is, the rate is 6.25, end of story. Variable, if you recall, we were looking last unit at credit cards where rates vary with the prime. So they would say, prime plus 6 points, but you're between a top and a bottom. So your payments with a variable rate loan, and the interest rate changes, your payments are going to change. You can get these loans from lots of different places. You can get them from your S&L, your commercial banks. Finance companies are ones that are associated with the organization, like, those are captive finance companies. Like, if I go to buy a car from GM, they have GM Finance. If I go to buy my appliances from GE, they have GE Finance. So it's another company that they own that generates profits for GE or GM. And then there's finance companies that just service all sorts of different organizations. And those are generally for high-risk borrowers. So that's like if you go into the veterinarian or the dentist or the orthodontist or like a used car lot, and it's like, oh, we're not going to carry you, but here's a brochure, here's an application for the organization that does our financing. They're quite high rates because they're usually for high-risk folks that don't have other sources of credit. So the key to shopping for a commercial loan is obviously you need to understand the terms, you need to understand whether it's variable or effective. You need to see what the total cost of the transaction is going to be. You need to understand if there's any collateral. And then you need to understand what happens if you try and prepay some of it. And this isn't as common as it used to be, but this can sneak up on you like, oh, I'm gonna take out a 6-year loan on my vehicle, but I'm gonna show you how to do this today. I want to cut 2 years off of it. And so I can do the math to figure out how to do that. So if I make another $63.29 a month in payments, I'm going to shorten my loan. You want to make sure there's no prepayment for doing that. And you can do that on any loan. You can do that on your mortgage. You can do that on your car. You can do that on your appliances, anything you want. And it's really, really easy to figure it out. So we did look at our debt safety ratio. We just did that in unit 6. I'm not quite sure why that's in here again. That's funny. Well, at any rate, we know how to track our credit. Okay, we did that with our debt safety ratio. We wrote down all of the things we owe money on. We wrote down how much we bring home a month. We calculated our ratio. The book suggests it should be less than 20%. I suggested that I think it should be closer to 10%. And then we figured out the 2 ways that we could change that, right? One way we can change it is to decrease our payments. And the other way we can change that is to increase our monthly take-home pay. So the worksheet that they're referring to, 7.1, is on page 282. And that's basically the same as our debt ratio worksheet that we were looking at last unit. Okay, so again, now we're going to get ready to do some calculations. So get out your calculators and paper and pen. Single payment loan. So, okay, I'm going to borrow some money and I'm going to make one payment at some point in the future. That's called a balloon, right? So I'm not making monthly payments or quarterly payments. I'm just going to make one balloon payment. And it's going to have all of the principal and interest in it. Another kind of single payment loan is they ask you to pay the interest in the interim and then balloon it at the end. So what I'm saying is, like, say that I owe $5,000 in 9 months. One kind of loan might be like, hey, Lisa, you need to make the interest payment every month. And then in 9 months, pay me $5,000. or you don't need to pay me anything, but you will accrue that interest during the 9 months and then pay me principal plus interest back. These loans can be secured with collateral. Collateral, as if you remember, is an asset that has value to the lender. So if I don't pay them back the $5,000, they can take my car or take my boat or whatever, take my 26 shares of stock that I gave them title to. So they're going to take the collateral. They're going to file it. That's called a lien, L-I-E-N, at the county. And that says, if they default on this note, I get title to that piece of property. And that's how collateral works. You can still use it in the interim. Like if it's my car, I can drive it. If it's my boat, I can use it. If it's my stock, I can't sell it because they've got title to it. Chattel refers to collateral that is tangible property, like a car. Yeah. So it's the same situation that we've been doing before. Interest equals principal times rate times time. So you're going to calculate your interest on the outstanding balance. You're going to tack it on, and that's what you're going to pay them back. Discount method's a little bit more complicated. We skirted around that in Unit 6. We're going to dive into it a little bit more today, which is I want to borrow $5,000. And they discount the note. So they really calculate the interest up front. So I don't really get $5,000 at all. I get $5,000 minus the interest. So say I get $4,700. Okay, so a discounted note, the interest is calculated up front. It's subtracted from the principal, and then you get the remainder. And the key about discount method, which we'll look at, is your APR is going to be higher than what's stated on the note because your principal is lower. I never got $5,000. I got $4,700. So when you divide the interest by the principal, you're not going to come up with the amount that they put on the note. You're going to come up with an amount that's higher. Okay, so simple interest method. Let's do this. So first off, the statement here, the APR and the stated rate of interest are always the same. Okay, so that's different from a discounted note. Whatever it says on the note is what your annual percentage rate is. So I go get a $10,000 2-year loan from a business colleague because I want to expand access to my vendors. Okay, so it's a business note. And she's like, you know, I'm going to give it to you for 2 years. You don't need to worry about anything for 2 years. I want you to use this money, get your supply chain flowing, build some new vendors, build your working capital. And at the end of 2 years, I want you to pay me back the $10,000 plus 2 years at 8%. And the interest is for the entire term of the loan. There's no compounding. So just do a very simple interest calculation, principal times rate times time. And then I encourage you to think about what your time is, what your T is, because we always do T as something divided by 12. So what's your numerator going to be if this is a 2-year note? So go ahead, turn off the tape, work it, and tell me how much she's paying back the note at the end of 2 years. So if you calculated it correctly, there's nothing fancy here. There was no compounding. There's no discounting. Principal times rate times time. And the T was 24/12, right? Because APR is quoted as an annual number. And usually we break this down by months. So this was years. So 24/12. So at the end of 2 years, she has to pay back the 10. I have to pay back the 10 grand plus 1,600. Now, to your APR on a simple interest loan is always equivalent to the stated rate. So you don't even have to do this calculation, but I'm going to just to show you how I prove that that's the same number. So again, we always have to come to annual percentage rate, not monthly, not quarterly, not for 2 years, for 1 year. That's how interest is always quoted, right? So my APR is equal to the 8% times 10,000 times 24/12. And then I have to divide it by the number of years in the loan, right? Because I want to get it to 1 year. That's what APR is. And then I have to divide it by the average loan balance that's outstanding. Well, my loan balance never changes. It was 10,000 when the loan was written, and it was 10,000 the day I paid her back. So, you know, nothing, all we're doing here is the math to prove that with a simple interest note, your APR is always the same as the stated interest rate. Now, when we get to a discount, it's a little bit trickier. So let me make this disappear and tell you how this works. Okay, so with a discounted loan, again, you're going to calculate how much the interest is. And we know that, right? We just did that here. It's $1,600. So that amount is subtracted from the amount they give you. So if you look at this, let's turn this on. So the total finance charge, $1,600. Calculate how much I get from my lender. I'm not going to get 10 grand. I'm going to get what? $8,400, right? Because they took the interest right off the top. So the key now is how much was the APR on this thing? It's the same formula we just used here. So principal times rate times time, and then you've got to convert it to an annual number. So divide by 2. And you've got then divide it by the average loan balance outstanding. And the loan balance didn't change between the beginning and the end. So beginning balance plus ending balance divided by 2. That's how you get an average, right? You take 2 points in time and then divide by 2. So write your formula out, turn off the tape, and then solve for APR. And we know that in the discount method, it's not going to be equal to the stated rate. So turn it off, find the APR, and we'll meet back here. So principal times rate times time, 1,600 divided by 2 years, right? Because I've got to always get it to 1 year of interest. 8,400 plus 8,400 divided by 2 is 8,400. So look at how much higher the APR is. I'm really paying 9.5%, not the 8% that was stated, because my principal was never 10 grand. It's 8,400. Okay, these aren't super common, but you do need to know the difference in how they look. Okay, an installment loan. An installment loan is what most of us are most familiar with. When you get out of school and you start paying back your student loans, that's what they're going to look like. Car loans, that's what they look like. You know, those will probably be the most common. And you pay back in a series of equal payments. And every time you make a payment, part of it's principal and part of it's interest. And I mean, it can be, you know, a 6-month note, or it can be my mortgage, which is, you know, 30 years, right? So they look, they're, you know, configured the same, and there's a wide range of time periods they can go over. Now, there's different ways of calculating finance charges on an installment loan. This is by far and away the most common. In fact, I'm not even sure I've ever seen this. So a simple interest method, and stick with me here. Say you get a car loan for 10 grand. The first month, they calculate your interest. And just in your head, that's going to be 10,000, right? Principal times rate times time. Paying monthly, 10,000 times 5% times 1/12, right? So that's going to be the interest portion of my payment. So here's my payment, say my payment's $400. I calculate the interest. Whatever isn't interest is principal. Each payment has a portion that's interest and a portion that's principal. In the second month, when I make my payment, is the interest portion of the payment going to be higher, lower, or the same? And the answer is it's going to be lower because my principal is lower because I just paid it down a little bit, right? So with each payment, the amount of interest reduces, the amount of interest is reduced and the amount of principal increases. Okay, so here, we're going to go, let me just jot this down. We're going to open Excel and we're going to figure out a couple things. I've got a loan, a car loan, for $17,525. And it's a 2-year loan and they're charging me 6 3/8. Okay, so on page 292, they're showing you something called a loan amortization schedule. Amortization, okay, loan amortization schedule. And you can do these, you can manually set them up and do it like the schedule, but I'm going to show you how to do it really super easily in Excel. And I'm also going to show you how you make the payment, how you just calculate one payment. And this is very helpful if you're just trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, like my son and his girlfriend were just looking at buying a car and they're like, I don't know if I can afford the payments. And I'm like, well, let's see. I mean, there's also 100,000 payment calculators on the internet, but I'm going to show you how to do it here. Okay, so you go into Excel and stop the tape if you need to get there, and then File New. And you're going to see all these things called templates. And my loan amortization schedule is right up here because I use it all the time. I use it to teach and I also use it to for my own life. But if you didn't have it up here, you would go under business and just scroll down until you find it. Templates in Excel are pre-established workbooks that help you solve a business problem. And I mean, this is just crazy helpful. So let's go up here. How do I get rid of this thing? Okay. Let's go up here and enter our values. So the loan amount was $17,525. And my annual interest rate was 6 3/8. So if you didn't know what 3/8 was, you would take 3 divided by 8 and see that that is 0.375. So 6.375 is the annual interest rate. And then it wants me to enter the loan period in years. I'm going to pay over 2 years. How many times a month do I pay? Or a year, excuse me. I pay monthly, so 12. And when's my first payment due? So let's say that's on December 1st. Oh. What did I hit here? 12/1/21. And then it's asking, are you making an optional extra payment? And I can play with this and I'll do that in a second, but at this point, no. What's my payment? So just take a moment and familiarize yourself. Go find out what my payment is a month. Okay, so that's $779.68. Next question. How much interest am I paying over the life of the loan? $1,187.40. Next question. How much am I going to still owe after I've made my 10th payment? What's my balance after I've been paying on this thing for 10 months? So take a second and go find that. So go down to my 10th payment, beginning balance, I make my payment. So after my 10th payment, I'll owe $10,492. Okay, now go compare the interest that you make, the interest, okay, so every month you make this payment, right, $779.68. The first month, your interest portion is $93.10, and you pay down $686.58 on your principal. What's the difference between the interest you pay on your first payment and the interest you pay on your 20th? Look at that, 93 bucks here, $20.38 there. So every month your interest is going to go down, isn't it? Okay, now let's say I want to see what happens if I pay an extra 50 bucks a month. And remember this number, right? $1,187.40. And remember that this is 24 months. What happens if I put another 50 bucks a month on it? Any guesses? You think it's going to knock off a couple months of payment? I would probably guess a couple months, 2 months. Okay, it knocks off 1 month and it drops my interest by 80 bucks. Now let's do something a little more dramatic. Let's go in here because I did this. Let's go in and put in a $200,000 mortgage at 3.5%. If this is a 30-year note, okay, you can go see what your payment is. $898 bucks a month. Over the life of the loan, I am going to pay, oh wait, let's get that extra payment out of there, sorry. Out of the life of the loan, over the life of the loan, on a $200,000 loan, I'm going to pay $123,000 in interest. Holy crap. Now, I want to do anything I can to get that number down, and I don't want to pay my house off over 30 years. That's what I got my mortgage for, because that gives me wiggle room if anything ever happens, like one of us loses our job, or one of us gets sick or whatever, right? I want to keep my mandatory payment low, but I want to take the life of the loan down. And I feel like we can afford another 250 bucks a month. I bet you this is going to knock 5 years off of my loan. Let's go see. First off, what just happened to the amount of the interest? It went from $123,000 down to 80. And if you go down here now, I started the loan in 2021. It's going to be done in 2042. I knocked 9 years off the loan by making a $250 a month extra payment. 9 years. Even just making $100 extra a month payment. I'm done with it in 46. I knocked 5 years off of my loan by putting an extra $100 a month, and I saved $23,000 in interest. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see how beneficial that is. Okay, so that's an installment loan. Oh, also I wanted to show you too while we were here, how to do a payment, just to calculate a payment. So if you just want to calculate a payment quick and dirty, and I will have you do this on the exam, you can just do equals PMT. And these are up in this little FX insert function. I happen to know what the parameters are, but if you didn't, you would go up there. And I want to, so it says type a brief description of what you want to do. Well, I want to calculate a payment. And it's like, here's some choices. Okay, so you would go and you can read the description on each of them. I know that what we're doing is PMT. And here's the parameters. So the rate that I just had on that mortgage was 5%. But here's the kicker, you always have to remember this, is 5% is an annual percentage rate. I'm not doing this annually, I'm making my payments monthly. So I have to divide by 12. The total number of payments for this loan, I'm going to be paying for 30 years, 12 times a year. So you could put 360 in here, or I just have Excel do the math for me. And what's the amount of the loan? It was $200,000. So there's my payment. Why is that different from my loan amortization schedule? I must have put in a different parameter. Oh yeah, I had 3.5%. There we go. There's my 898. Okay, so this is how, so again, and you need to know this, equals PMT. Your rate has got to be translated to how often you're making the payment. So I'm doing that monthly, so I have to divide by 12. Number of payments over the course of the loan, not number of years, number of payments. It's a 30-year mortgage times monthly, so that's 360, and then the amount of the loan. So this is just to do a quick and dirty payment. The loan amortization schedule is so that you can see the details of your loan. And if you take out a loan, the bank's got one of those, obviously. You should print your own loan amortization schedule so you can see where you're at, right, every month. And the other thing you should do is whenever you can, hammer away little extra payments over long term, make a really big difference. Okay, so I wanted to go through, this is what we just did on the loan amortization schedule, but I want to make sure that you're tracking everything here. So on that payment that we were working on here, right, the $17,525 loan, 6 3/8, and again, that is 6.375, 24 months. I want you to calculate the breakdown between principal and interest in month 2. So just a second, my dog's needing attention here. So in the first month, principal times rate times time, right? Principal was $17,525 times the rate, 0.06375, times the time, 112. My interest was $93.10. So at that point in time, how did that first payment of $779.68 break down? Well, $93.10 of it was interest. I just calculated that. So the remainder got applied to my principal. So do I still owe $17,525? No, I owe $17,525 minus the principal reduction. So now here is the amount of outstanding principal. Please calculate it for month 2. Turn off the tape and just do this calculation. How much is my interest? My new principal times rate times time, which is 1/12. I've just consolidated it here, but it really is the same thing. Principal times rate times time. Get the interest, and then the remainder of the payment never changes, is principal reduction. So shut the tape off and go do that. Okay, so you can see here, principal times rate times time. My interest, of course, went down this month because the principal went down. My payment never changes. So the amount that went to principal went up. And now what's the balance of my loan after 2 payments? $16,148.19. I'm not even going to go through this add-on method because honestly, you really don't see that in the real world very much. Okay, this is just a comparison between the 2 methods. One thing I will tell you about add-on method is that these loans are always more expensive because you're adding loan onto the principal and then more interest is compounding on that additional amount. So it's always going to be way more expensive. It says here the rule of thumb is that it's going to be twice as expensive. Okay, this is worth talking about really quickly because I didn't know what this was. So when we went and got our first loan, I think it was like on furniture. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was on kids' furniture. And just married, blah, blah, blah. And, we borrow whatever, $2,000 to, our kids both needed furniture in their bedrooms. Okay, great. So they're like, well, what if one of you dies and you can't make the payments? It's like, and we're sitting there like late 20s, oh my gosh, I don't know what happens. Well, we can sell you credit life insurance to go with your note. Okay, you never want to buy life insurance to go with your credit. It's always going to be way more expensive. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have life insurance. We're actually going to have a guest speaker pretty quick here that's going to make a pretty compelling case that you probably should have life insurance, but you don't get it from the source that you get your credit from. It's costly and it gives way more money to the lender. You want to go talk to your insurance guy or gal to get your insurance. And let me just tell you that also the other thing that we want to talk about here is sometimes if you've got cash, it may be more financially lucrative for you to use the cash rather than to borrow the money. But sometimes you might want to keep your cash in the bank and borrow the money. And what that's called is it's a comparison between paying on time or paying cash. So we're going to use worksheet 7.2, which is on page 296 in your book. We're going to go through the cost of borrowing, the cost of paying cash, and then figure out which we think is the better opportunity. So okay, so I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to do a lab chat on buying on time or paying cash. So that'll be a separate video. And I'm going to have you print out worksheet 7.2, which is in Moodle, and then follow along in the lab chat with me, because this is a really important exercise. So I hope this has been helpful, and let me know if you need anything, and good luck with chapter 7. Thanks. Bye.